First, we would like to begin by giving you all some general information about person-environment theories. Person-environment theories are based on the scientific notions of ecology, which is why they are also sometimes referred to as ecological models. Person-environment theories are mainly used to help explain the processes of human development, but not necessarily the outcome. For example, person-environment theories are not intended to explain how students develop their psychosocial identities, such as Latino identity or Black, LGBTQ, or white identities. Instead, person-environment theories are intended to explain how students' interactions with their environments affect those identity development processes.
One of the pioneers of the ecological models was a developmental psychologist named Yuri Bronfenbrenner. Now, Bronfenbrenner based his work off of Kurt Lewin's work, which stated that behavior is a function of the interaction of the person and the environment. Bronfenbrenner adapted that equation to focus on development instead of just behavior, and created his own to state that development is a function of the interaction of the person and the environment. For the rest of this presentation, we will be focusing on Bronfenbrenner's developmental ecology model, the 4 different components of the model, how this theory is relevant to student-first professionals, and as well as some critiques of that model.
This is Maimua, and I will be discussing more about developmental ecology and addressing Bronfenbrenner's theoretical model. Developmental ecology is primarily concerned with the interaction between an individual and their environment, although focusing more on the individual. Bronfenbrenner believed that development cannot be attributed solely to a person's characteristics without considering the context. For this reason, Bronfenbrenner's theory uses a model that highlights 4 different components. They are process, person, context, and time, also known as the PPCT model. The process refers to the interaction between the individual and their environment. Here it is important to understand what factors contribute to their proximal processes, and then facilitate those processes without overwhelming the individual. The person component examines the attributes of the individual and how those attributes may impact development and the person's interaction with the environment.
The context is typically understood as the critical location for interactions to take place. This is where Bronfenbrenner's model is influenced by 4 levels of systems: the microsystem, the mesosystem, the exosystem, and the macrosystem. The microsystem refers to an individual's immediate environment, such as friends, work setting, family, organizations, etc. The mesosystem refers to the interactions of those immediate environments and how those interactions support or inhibit an individual's development. An example could be the interactions between your romantic partner and your family, or your family and your work setting. The exosystem begins moving away from the individual. However, this system still exerts a certain amount of influence on an individual's microsystems. An example of exosystems could be public policies, school administration policies, or larger family challenges. And finally, the macrosystem, which is the broadest level of context, essentially refers to the cultural, political, and/or economical forces that exert an influence on the interactions of all the other systems.
Alright, so let's give an example of how all this works. This is Anthony. Anthony's microsystem is his friends, his classmates, his partner, and his family. Now, Anthony's mesosystem is the interaction between all of his microsystems. So, the interaction between his relationship with his partner and his responsibilities as a grad student would be his mesosystem. And low-key, Anthony would much prefer hanging out with his partner than studying for his comprehensive exam. Now, for the exosystem that affects Anthony is the fact that his grad program administrators had to push back his comprehensive exam date a day back, thus influencing his celebratory weekend plans with his partner. An example of a macro system would be the funding issues taking place between the California Department of Education and the California State University system, which resulted in a strike that affected Anthony's comprehensive exam date, thus affecting his study plans and ultimately affecting his friends, family, and partner.
And finally, time, which is a concept that interacts with the process, person, and context, can be described at 3 levels: microtime, mesotime, and macrotime.
Now, as future student affairs professionals, you're probably wondering why or how this model is important. Person-environment theories and Bronfenbrenner's model can really help guide the understanding of how campus environments affect students' development. This is an important framework that student affairs professionals can use to determine the effect that campus climate has on different student populations. Here are a few examples of how ecological models can be useful and/or relevant to multiple areas within student affairs. Within housing, this model can help guide the understanding of how students' living environments can affect their ability to connect with other members in their community. This can be useful when placing students into different residence halls or specific living communities. Another example could be within Greek life. This model can help student affairs professionals gain an understanding of how a Greek student's environment and their various context systems interact in ways that can be both beneficial and/or detrimental to their overall development. And finally, from an admissions point of view, having some foundational knowledge about person-environment theory can be beneficial to those professionals that are in positions to change or influence the overall campus climate through various admissions policies.
Now we would like to cover a few critiques of Bronfenbrenner's model. According to Evans and Dahl in the Student Development Theory book, there is no clear reason why ecological models have not become enduring theoretical forces within student development. When looking through Bronfenbrenner's model, it is clear that there are a few limitations to the model and ecological models in general that may very well be a part of the reason why. First, this theory does not provide as much structure or detailed processes as a developmental model. As we mentioned before, this model focuses more on the process of development rather than the outcome. This model cannot be used as a standalone model to help guide our understanding of student development. Since assessment is becoming more of an expectation within the field of student affairs, this model would be quite difficult to assess because it does not define any outcomes on its own.
The complexity of applying this theory and defining environments is another limitation. While not entirely impossible, it is challenging to examine every single context system for every individual on a college campus. Trying to define this process for all students would not only be cumbersome, but is also dependent on different perceptions of individuals, which may also be quite different than their realities. Another challenge is the fact that microsystems can be constantly changing during and at different points in time. The lack of stability in environments can be a cause for inconsistencies and affect data or application of the theory.
So in closing, person-environment theories are extremely useful when applied to understanding a student's experience on campus as it relates to the campus climate, their personal relationships, and influence of environments. We would like to now pose a discussion question to you all. Keeping in mind your current role, aka your job, fieldwork position, and/or graduate assistantship, in what ways do you incorporate person-environment theory into your work?